Hey, everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
For the Booze.
For the Booze.
Giggity, giggity. How was your Halloween?
It was so much fun. We had
Yes.
such a good night with the boys.
It was very fun.
Walking them around. They were super brave for the first time ever, being little ones.
Yes, indeed. The first year that they didn't get scared at every little thing that we came upon. So it was kind of very helpful for the, or very outlook, the blue and blue. Apparently, talking is not going to be my strong suit this episode. Sorry, everybody. I was trying to say that it makes the future look brighter with them going out for Halloween because in the last few years it's been a little rough.
Very rough.
So this is, I like it. I enjoy it. And here comes our constant listener, the cat.
Our kitty cat. She always sneaks out as soon as we sit down.
But now that we are moving away from Halloween, I know it's very sad.
Oh.
But now we are coming into the more family holidays.
Yes.
And I thought, wouldn't it just be delightful to do cases and hauntings centered around families?
Ooh.
So that's what we're here for. This is going to be the start. And instead of us telling you, we're gonna let somebody else give you a little bit of what we're going to talk about today.
All right.
So without further ado, ma'am, please take it away.
We went there that day, and I took a relic of Padre Pio in the house with me. A relic that came in the mail that day. That very day, it came in the mail. And I asked him to help me with discernment. I didn't know that house was demonic. I didn't know anything about it. I couldn't speculate that the house was haunted in any way, shape, or form. Just that we were called to investigate why one family were all murdered, another family moved in and fled. So Channel 5 News said, the viewers have a right to know what happened. That's why we went to the house.
So what do you think really actually took place in the house? Do you have any opinions on what?
Evil. It's the personification of evil. How evil can personify itself. How it can be attracted in certain situations.
So, if you don't know, that was Lorraine Warren. Because we today, our first of the family holiday episodes, we're going to cover the very popular
Amityville house.
Yes.
Okay, and this is noted to this day as the most popular investigation that Ed and Lorraine Warren ever did.
Yes, it absolutely is.
I mean, this thing it's got multiple movies, sequels, books. It's amazing to me that for something that happened, what was it, like 45 years ago or something, that it is still this popular in 2022. But throughout the years, it's incredible to me.
It is, absolutely. And, the Warrens are a super big name.
Absolutely. I mean,
in the paranormal world.
Without the Warrens, we wouldn't have most of the paranormal stuff we have today. I'm not saying we wouldn't have any of it. I believe they popularized it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because they were doing this stuff for entertainment value and bringing the haunted museum stuff long before anybody else. Okay, they were doing this just so much farther back than anyone else.
I think they had a lot to do with bringing it up and making it so big in culture and society. Because before then, I mean, it was talked about, not like it was so secretive, like way back in the early 1900s.
I had a talk with our good friend Rick the other day, and I noticed kind of a pattern. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, paranormal was all the rage. Okay, where people would have people come over, and they would do like seances, and there was like the whole table tapping thing was really popular, and then it kind of fizzled out until around, I'd say like the 50s, 60s, somewhere in there when Ed and Lorraine came around, and kind of brought it back to the forefront.
Right.
And then it fizzled out again. Like they did, their investigation did sprout off a lot of stories and movies, but pop culture, it kind of died off a little bit until later on when the Conjuring movies and stuff came out, when Lorraine and Ed were working with people on movies and stuff like that. And then it brought about this era of ghost hunters, ghost adventures, the Destination Fears. All these, in my opinion, track back to Ed and Lorraine Warren.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
So, in the spirit of family, we're doing
the Amityville Horror House.
Yes. So, Amityville Horror House, better known as, well, maybe not better known, but technically known as 112 Ocean Avenue. 110, 112. It's one of those. It's in the story. We'll get to it. In Amityville, New York, in Long Island. So I think without further ado, it's time to jump into this one.
Let's do it.
It's been more than 45 years since George and Kathy Lutz fled their house in Amityville, Long Island, claiming it was haunted by evil spirits. The couple's terrifying tale of demonic possession would later inspire the 1977 book, The Amityville Horror, a hit 1979 movie of the same name, and several sequels, including the 2005 remake starring Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George. 30 miles outside of New York City, nestled in the Long Island town of Amityville, stands the house forever linked to the Amityville Horror phenomenon. The iconic window scene in the film has since been changed, and so is the interior, for obvious reasons. Amenities include a deck, a sunroom, a back patio, and a boathouse. A very stunning house that appears to be completely normal, with absolutely no paranormal activity in sight, but looks can be deceiving. On November 13th, 1974, the estate was the scene of a horrific mass murder. Using a .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 336C rifle, 23-year-old Ronald J. DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family while they were asleep, which included his parents and 4 siblings. The quaint-looking house at 112 Ocean Avenue was the scene of the grisly murders before the Lutz family claimed to endure paranormal terror that inspired the Amityville Horror. In the early morning hours, the house became more than a mere suburban home. Instead, it became a ghastly crime scene as Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked the halls with a rifle and killed every member of the family. He later claimed that there were voices in his head urging him to kill, and some believe to this day that he was indeed hearing evil spirits that resided within the so-called Amityville Horror House. Despite the widely publicized 1974 killings, numerous families have since moved in and out of the house, now listed as 108 Ocean Avenue. Meanwhile, the purportedly paranormal occurrences that happen here have spawned a slew of books and films like the Amityville Horror, which have kept tourists flocking to the house ever since. Though DeFeo's grisly crimes were all too real, is it possible that he was actually under the control of evil spirits that inhabited the house and haunted the Lutz family that moved in soon after? Either way, the stories that would spawn from this location are both the grisliest crimes and most notorious alleged hauntings in modern history. It was in the middle of the night on that November 13th, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. killed 6 of his relatives while they were asleep. Parents Lois and Ronald DeFeo Sr., siblings 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Allison, 12-year-old Mark, and 9-year-old Matthew. His siblings were each only shot once. However, some physical evidence shows that DeFeo Jr.'s mother, Louise, and his sister Allison were probably awake when they were shot. After police searched DeFeo's bedroom and found boxes of ammunition matching the murder weapon, several of Ronald's friends were interviewed. They referred to Ronald as a known, quote, gun fanatic, and the story began to fall into place for the detectives. Though he would confess to his deeds, DeFeo's defense would later attempt to enter an insanity plea. DeFeo claimed he was guided by malevolent voices in his head and couldn't control his behavior. It was this claim and the murders themselves that spawned the notion that 112 Ocean Ave itself was haunted and that the DeFeo family as a whole were victims of the house. However, a look at DeFeo Jr.'s life provides an alternate reading of the events. With an abusive father and passive mother, the boy's troubled childhood led to substance abuse as an adult. He not only lashed out at his father, but once even threatened him with a gun. The parents hoped letting him live at the home and with a weekly allowance would help, even though DeFeo Jr. could barely hold down a job. On the day of the murders, he left work and went to the bar. He kept calling his home to no avail and complained to patrons about it. He eventually left, only to return at 6:30 a.m. when he yelled,
"You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot."
Authorities later found all 6 family members dead in their own beds, shot with a rifle at around 3:15 a.m., and positioned on their stomachs. There was no sign of struggle, nor that they were drugged. No local reports of gunshots were even logged, with only the DeFeo dog barking away. DeFeo Jr. would change his alibi several times, from claiming he was at the bar during the time of the murders to a mob hitman named Louis Fellini killing his family while forcing DeFeo Jr. to watch. He eventually confessed that he gunned his own family down and stood trial on October 14, 1975. Though attorney William Weber tried to enter an insanity plea, the prosecution argued DeFeo Jr. was a mere drug addict who was well aware of what he was doing that night. He was convicted on 6 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life. It wasn't until after the Lutz family moved into the house in December of 1975 that the purported hauntings of the Amityville Horror House allegedly set in. George and Kathy Lutz believed their purchase of the 4,000 square foot house at $80,000 was a steal, but moved out 28 days later after terrifying incidents allegedly forced them to flee. The day the Lutzes moved in, the couple had a priest bless the home, but George claimed the holy man felt an unseen hand slap him in the sewing room and heard a voice say, quote,
"Get out."
Soon after, the couple said they began noticing odd things around the house, such as doors being ripped off hinges, cabinets slamming shut, and slime oozing from the ceilings. Quote,
"There were odors in the house that came and went. There were sounds. The front door would slam shut in the middle of the night. I couldn't get warm in the house for many days."
George Lutz told ABC News in 2006. He claimed that he would mysteriously wake up at 3:15 a.m. nearly every night, the same time the DeFeo murders were believed to have happened. At times, his wife was physically transformed into an old woman and once levitated. One night, he heard his children's beds, quote, slamming up and down on the floor, but claimed he couldn't do anything because an invisible force was paralyzing him. The family moved out after 28 days, reportedly leaving their possessions behind, including clothes in their closet, food in the fridge. And 2 months later, a local TV crew did a segment on the house, bringing in so-called, quote, ghost hunters and paranormal experts to evaluate the couple's claims. Quote, "It was like a psychic slumber party," reporter Laura Didio recalled to ABC. The team took several photos inside, including a now infamous image apparently showing a, quote, demon boy peering out from one of the bedrooms. The psychics agreed that there was some kind of demonic force present in the house. One of the researchers, Lorraine Warren, remembers an, quote, overwhelming feeling of, quote, horrible depression in the house. The team also took a series of time-lapse photos of the upstairs landing. None of the photographs would show anything out of the ordinary, except for the one. The Lutz family would later collaborate with author Jay Anson for his best-selling book. The family has said they never signed a contract with Anson, and that the book and successful film spin-off netted them $300,000. Many people expressed doubts about their horror story, which fell under more scrutiny after DeFeo's defense attorney, William Weber, admitted he and the couple came up with the tale over several bottles of wine. Quote,
"We took real-life incidents and transposed them. In other words, it was a hoax,"
Weber reportedly said on the TV program A Current Affair in May of 1988. Still, George, who died in 2006, maintained that the story was the real deal, telling ABC, quote,
"I can just say what I experienced."
His son, Daniel Lutz, who was 10 at the time, has said that George invited mysterious and dangerous forces into their lives due to his interest in the occult. George's stepson, Christopher Quarantino, who was 7 when he lived in the house, came forward in 2005 to say the events in the Amityville Horror books and movies had been stretched to the point of fiction. Quarantino also said that George was obsessed with the occult and had exaggerated some paranormal incidents he believes did occur when he was a child. Quote, "He's a professional showman. In my opinion, I just feel as though we're being exploited," Quarantino said. The notorious house has passed through the hands of several owners since the Lutzes lived there, and no one else has reported any spooky happenings. It was next owned by James and Barbara Cromartie, the owners of Riverhead Raceway. The Cromarties changed the Amityville Horror House's address from 112 Ocean Ave to 108, hoping to stave off stalkers and retain its fluctuating value. To this day, the Amityville Horror House address remains as 108. After an uneventful decade living within its walls, they sold it to Peter and Jean O'Neill in 1987. The O'Neills sold it in 1997 for $310,000 to Brian Wilson, and no, not the Beach Boys singer. Most recently, the house sold for $605,000 in 2017. As for the New Jersey home used in the 1979 Amityville film's exterior shots, it was put on the market in 2011 for $1.45 million, then dropped to $1.35 million. When Odalis Fragoso put the 1920 structure on the market, she was immediately asked if it was haunted. She explained that ghosts had nothing to do with the sale and that she was merely divorcing her husband. When asked if she had seen the famous film, she explained she only saw parts of it, but that her children see it constantly. There have been a lot of claims widely debated when it comes to this house. The claims of damage to the locks, doors, and windows were rejected by Jim and Barbara Cromartie. They argued that they appeared to be the original items and had not been repaired. The Cromarties also revealed that the, quote, red room was a small closet in the basement and would have been known to the previous owners of the house because it was not concealed in any way. The claim made in Chapter 11 of the book that the house was built on the site where a local Shinecock Indians had once abandoned the mentally ill and dying was rejected by local Native American leaders. The claim of cloven hoof prints in the snow on January 1st, 1976, was rejected by researchers Rick Morin and Peter Jordan, whose investigation revealed that there had been no snowfall at that time. Neighbors reported nothing unusual during the time that the Lutz family were living there. Police officers depicted visiting the house in the book and 1979 film, but records show that the Lutz family did not call the police during the period that they were living on Ocean Avenue. The debate about the accuracy of the Amityville Horror continues. The various owners of the house since the Lutz family left in 1976 have publicly reported no problems while living there. James Cromartie, who bought the house and lived there with his wife Barbara for 10 years, commented, quote,
"Nothing weird ever happened, except for people coming by because of the book and movie," unquote.
Ultimately, the appeal of the Amityville house and its related New Jersey home seems largely rooted in purportedly exaggerated books and its Hollywood adaptations. To this day, horror fans truly convinced by the hauntings still visit the place, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Amityville Horror ghost.
Ooh.
It all comes down to a 28-day period that we know about the Amityville Horror House.
Right.
And I find it so interesting. I only left in the debated topics that I thought were the bigger ones, but if you actually go online and say, go to Wikipedia, I think almost every single instance of paranormal activity in this house has been challenged in some way or another.
Wow, really?
Yes. So there's always been a debate, and the problem, I'm going to get into the problem of it after.
Okay.
Because I want you to tell your story, but there is a problem when it comes to covering this place that we will get into.
Okay.
And it's not to say that it is or isn't haunted. That's not the problem, but you'll see what I mean. But it's just the claims are so Hollywood, where, demonic boys and oozing ceilings and beds being bounced up and down and doors and cabinets slamming. Not to say that this stuff maybe doesn't happen in real life in some places, because I've seen other allegations of, cabinets and stuff being slammed. I've even seen videos of it that, if they're not real, they're very convincing.
Right.
But it's just, with all of this piled together, it's so much. It's almost like they took every Hollywood idea of what a haunting is, and they
put it into one place.
And they put it on paper, yes. And
Yeah.
they just said, that's what happened here. So it is a widely debated topic in the paranormal community about the Amityville Horror House. I think more people than not don't believe it. But we're going to talk about that at the end, because I think there's a good reason it's debated. So we will get to that. But I think first, we need to hear what you have to say.
All right, let's go.
And now, time for an ad break.
And now, back to our show. Perhaps the most famous case investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren was the case known as the Amityville Horror, which went on to launch its own multi-million-dollar franchise before appearing in the second Conjuring movie. George and Kathy Lutz claimed they were driven out of their Long Island home in 1975 by a violent paranormal entity. A year before the Lutz family moved into the home, it was reported that Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 family members in the house. The Warrens investigated the home and claimed that it was haunted. In late December of 1975, just barely 1 year removed from the grisly events, George and Kathy Lutz bought the 4,000 square foot DeFeo house for a reasonable sum of $80,000. Although the Lutz family never once called the Amityville police to report any suspicious happenings, they quickly fled the house without their belongings after a mere 28 days of living there. They claimed that evil forces haunted their Long Island home. Shortly after purchasing the home, it was recommended by a friend that due to its recent history, the family should have the house blessed by a priest. Enter Father Piccaro, who performed a blessing even before the Lutz family had finished unpacking. During the blessing, Father Piccaro mentioned that one particular room bothered him, so he recommended that the Lutz family not use this particular room as a bedroom. So the Lutz family agreed to use the room as a sewing room. Father Piccaro couldn't completely explain the feeling, but he just repeated that it made him uncomfortable. As the story of the Lutz family would eventually become public, Father Piccaro's would undergo irreparable damage from which he would never recover. While moving into their new home, a mysterious string of mishaps rocked the Lutz family to its core. One day, while they were unpacking, the Lutz family dog, which was tied up in the backyard, jumped the fence in an escape attempt, but ended up hanging himself. Harry was eventually rescued before he strangled himself to death. The Lutz family eventually got moved into their new place. The house began to spill its horrid history before the family's eyes. Strong, putrid odors emanated throughout the home. Green slime allegedly oozed through the walls, and the toilets turned black. Large swarms of houseflies continued to pile up in the sewing room. Drops of mysterious black goo leaked through the keyholes throughout the house. Footsteps were quite often heard walking throughout the house. Household appliances turned themselves on and off randomly, and doors would strangely slam shut, even though, upon further investigation, they were locked and never appeared to have been opened in the first place. The entire family noticed severe mood swings and personality changes amongst themselves. George found himself eventually awakening at 3:15 a.m. with an uncontrollable urge to check the boathouse, but of course, nothing was ever discovered. He often felt sick and would go days without bathing, and he lost quite a bit of weight. Kathy experienced nightmares, and the children fought amongst themselves more than what was common with the usual sibling disagreements. These strange occurrences weren't limited to the Lutz family, however. Even neighbors or visiting friends were subjected to the house's antics. During gatherings, visitors could hear bumps and bangs, and they even heard footsteps walking on the floor above their heads. The Lutz family was persuaded to recite the Lord's Prayer while walking throughout the house in hopes of frightening the spirits, but to no avail. During one particular recitation, a mysterious voice shouted,
"Will you please stop?"
With their patience nearing its end, the family began to unravel when strange apparitions made their appearance. Kathy continually felt like she was being watched. Shadows moved around the house, and they would see eyes peering at them from other rooms. The younger Lutz child found a way to deal with her personal terror. She developed an imaginary friend named Jody. 4-year-old Missy claimed Jody was her angel. George and Kathy decided to take action. They began throwing objects at the eyes that peered at them from other rooms in the house. Kathy once hurled a chair at a pair of eyes that was looking at her from one of the bedrooms. The sound of a squealing pig was the only result. The Lutz family could no longer endure the terror. The family had finally come to the point where they could no longer stand the restlessness. They decided to go to Kathy's mother's house to give them some time to sort things out and to decide what they wanted to do. In their haste to leave, they left clothes thrown all over the place. They left food in the refrigerator, and many belongings simply lay where they were just left. It was eventually decided that they would leave the house, just leave it, and never come back. As George was completing his packing, he noticed that the ambient temperature inside the house fluctuated rapidly, from cold to hot. As he ran from the house, the walls began to move back and forth, moaning and groaning as if they were expelling a lodged chunk of meat. One final event convinced George Lutz that he would never return to the house at 112 Ocean Avenue. As George was running down the stairs, an apparition appeared on the stairway's second-floor landing. It slowly raised an arm and pointed at him. As we stated in the beginning of this was in fact Ed and Lorraine Warren's most famous case by far. The Warrens were 2 of 9 people who investigated the home. Even years later, the Amityville investigation was their most requested lecture topic. Over the years, rumors have come out which claim to prove the Amityville case a fraud. How these rumors started and how they became so ubiquitous is unclear. What is clear is that the Warrens saw the house for themselves, and they experienced some of the phenomena which occurred. They have photographs and reports which show remarkable proof of the existence of a very remarkable phenomena in that house. It's believed that the hoax rumor began with a man who called himself Dr. Stephen Kaplan, although he held no doctorate degree from any university. This fact was exposed on several occasions, yet that never stopped Mr. Kaplan from making these claims. He was the self-proclaimed president of the Parapsychology Society of Long Island and some other related societies, presumably founded by himself. As far as the Warrens could tell, he hated them because Mr. Lutz, the owner of the Amityville Horror home, called Mr. Kaplan prior to calling the Warrens and asked him to investigate the situation. Mr. Kaplan came to the home to investigate with 6 witches and the Channel 7 news team, and Mr. Lutz threw Mr. Kaplan off the property and then called the Warrens. This started a 20-year vendetta of Mr. Kaplan against the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine met with a priest, Father Piccaro, and the Lutz when they were first called in to investigate, but the Lutz family were living at Mr. Lutz's mother house in Deer Park, New York, because they were too afraid to go back to the house to live. They were all too afraid to even speak of the phenomena. So deep was their fear at this point, they'd even left all of their furniture and possessions behind, not daring to return to move out. It simply wasn't worth the risk. The first time the Warrens went to the house, it was with an anchorman from Channel 5 News, a professor from Duke University, and the president of the American Society for Psychic Research. The first day was horrifying. Lorraine received non-stop clair-visual and clair-audial messages about the phenomena which had occurred. Anxious to see for himself whether or not the phenomena was real, Ed, who normally experiences little clairvoyant feelings at all, went into the cellar. The cellar is typically where evil spirits spend their days, and therefore he felt that would be the best place for him to start. Despite his usual immunity from witnessing phenomena, Ed saw shadows along with thousands of pinpoints of light. These shadows attempted to push him into the ground. He used religious resistance and commanded the evil spirits to leave. He immediately got the sensation of something attempting to lift him off the ground, and he knew then that this was truly a house of evil. Although he knew that this was a serious case, he had no idea how severe it really was. He has never been so seriously affected in any case before or after the Amityville Horror case. Lorraine was frightened before she even entered the house. She'd contacted some priest friends in advance to ask them to accompany her in spirit to the house. She took relics with her of Padre Pio, which she'd received in a letter from a total stranger earlier in the week. As she went to the stairs to go to the second floor landing, she felt as if there was a huge force of rushing water against her, and the atmosphere around her was solidifying. On the second floor, Lorraine went into the sewing room. Marvin Scott, the Channel 5 anchorman, told Lorraine, quote,
"I hope that this is as close to hell as I ever get."
End quote. He said this as they walked into Missy's room. Lorraine immediately knew clairvoyantly that Missy's room had the same furniture as it had when the DeFeo girls were murdered. Mr. Lutz had let his children sleep in the DeFeo children's deathbeds. In the master bedroom, one wall was completely covered in mirrors. Lorraine sat on the bed where the DeFeo parents had been shot. Only the mattress on the bed had been changed. The feeling in the rooms was was that of absolute horror, and going from one room to the next did not dissipate the feeling at all. One just seemed more horrible than the next. On the third floor, Lorraine clairvoyantly encountered Ronald DeFeo. This encounter was so awful, and he was so sinister, that she felt there was absolutely nothing she could do to help or eject his spirit from the house. Once she was downstairs again, she was asked to do something she had never wanted to do after entering the house. She was asked to communicate with the spirits in the house and ask what really happened. All of the investigators were in the room. The investigator from Duke University actually passed out cold from fear. 2 of the other investigators complained of heart palpitations and had to rest on the floor. The house seemed to have a more dire effect on men. Mary Pasquarella, the director of Prominent Psychic Research Group in New Haven, actually became so ill that she had to be taken outside, and from that moment forward, she never entered the house again. Ed and Lorraine Warren left at 1 a.m. Both were so affected that they vowed they'd never go back into that house again. But they did, and the Amityville Horror story was born.
Yes. The story was born.
That it was.
So, a lot of stuff happens in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we need to talk about some of it.
Okay.
One major thing that I was going to say before, but waited until now, was that there really haven't been any prominent investigations there since.
Right.
So, there's really no basis to go off of anybody else except for the group that went in there way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really ends up leaning on how much do you believe in these people in that time. This may be a hot take for some people to hear.
Uh-oh.
But I, unfortunately, don't have a lot of faith in Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I know that that's probably going to bother some people. But I have my reasons. But here's the other side. That I won't outright say that there is nothing going on at this house, because the reality of it is an entire family was murdered in this home.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's 2 sides of this that, like, I feel like I have to weigh in order to make my decision here in a few. And it's really hard for me, because for most of my adult life, I have thought that a lot of the Warrens' investigations are just bogus.
Okay. Do you think it's... I want to believe in the Warrens.
Me too.
I do.
I believe in what they did for the community.
That's... See, and I think maybe Lorraine was sensitive. I'll say that. Some people can be, sensitive to those types of things, or have... feelings, I don't know, and some people may have visions or whatever. I think what they did was great for the paranormal history side of things, I guess, and kind of building that
Okay.
up to what it was.
Let me throw this out there.
Okay.
I'll do it like this. The house is from 1920.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one claim before that, until the DeFeo murder, that there was hauntings. There wasn't any claims until Ronald DeFeo brought it up as part of his defense mechanism, and then the Lutz family claimed to have all this stuff happen, and then all of a sudden, this became a haunted place until after they moved out, because every single person that moved in afterwards had no paranormal activity at all.
Right.
None. Hard for me to get on board with. However, there is one picture floating around of the boy, the demon boy. It is a very convincing photo. That's the problem here.
Right.
Is that photo exists. And it's not what is that? Pareidolia. It's not like when you look at something and can kind of make out a face, so your brain says, "Oh, it's somebody."
That's what
this
that
is somebody.
is,
This is a person.
Yeah.
There is somebody. There is a boy standing there. And it is very clearly a young boy, probably around 13 years old.
Wow.
It is extremely, that is a person.
Yeah.
So there's, you know what, we just need to get into this, right?
Are we jumping? We're doing it.
We have to.
Let's do it.
Is it real?
Well, me, I have an answer, but we're going to let Megan go first. What do you think? Because there's a lot on both sides of this to take in.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts?
I do not think this is real.
Boom.
I think the murders were terrible. Okay. It was really, really bad. Should have never happened.
No argument there.
And I think that in the 70s, something like that happening is huge news, right? Super big news. And I mean, it would be now too. But I think the Lutz family that moved in was trying to maybe kind of ride the coattails of that in their own way. I don't know. And then the Warrens come in, and I feel like that was kind of early on in their careers, and maybe it was used as a jumping off point. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. There could possibly have been something happening. Maybe it was just to like it was the family and not the house itself.
Okay.
So no, I do not think it's real. What about you, Stephen?
That's fair. Okay, so I've been thinking about this since Halloween because we kind of discovered this was the topic we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to take in all the evidence that we have. House built in 1920, was never any paranormal claims up until the DeFeo murders. Those happened. He claims that the house is haunted as a defense thing. The Lutzes move in. They know this information.
Mm-hmm.
The dad's super into the occult, so he's already on edge with everything.
Right.
Probably reads that, freaks himself out. I mean, this is in the 70s. There could have been mold. There could have been all kinds of stuff oozing from something. Could have been a leaky pipe. Could have been all kinds of stuff. The fact that the Cromartys later moved in and said, hey, all of these parts on these doors and windows, it's all original. Nothing's been changed. So how could they have been broken?
See, that for me is
it's a big one, right?
A big thing,
it's a huge one.
Yeah.
Not to mention the red room that we didn't really get into, but it was like a room that they discovered and all this other weird stuff. It's open. They would have known about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I just am not a believer in Ed and Lorraine. I believe they did most of it for clout. They did a lot of it. If you go and look through their catalog of stuff and you really pay attention to it, you really watch any of the video footage that they have, you will see there's a video. There's a famous video that they have where they're in a kitchen. I can't remember where they are, which one this was, but they're in a kitchen. They're at the table, and the table shakes, and chairs move, and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. I know which one you're talking about.
But the problem with this video is it will never be able to be real evidence because there's a whole part of the table that's out of frame.
Right.
Where somebody could be sitting, moving stuff. And it's stuff like, there's always something like that. And there's like the Conjuring case, right? The Conjuring house case in Connecticut. The movie's going to tell you that they were there in the thick of it, but the reality of it is the parents kicked them out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even really have them there. They brought him in, they did not appreciate what they were doing. They kicked him out. It's things like that, you know, especially I wasn't there to see all this, but I just don't feel like the Amityville case for me is any different. And I hold a lot in the fact that decades worth of other people have lived in that house since then and have not had anything happen.
Yep.
Happily lived there, lived normal lives
Yep.
to the point where they said, we're going to change the physical address so people will stop freaking coming here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because there's nothing going on.
I see where I know everybody sees where this is going. I do not think this is real.
Right.
However, there's a twist here. I think there is a great potential for paranormal activity in this house, only based on the fact of what happened there.
Yeah.
The fact that
absolutely.
those murders went down. But if there is, I think it's very light. I don't think it's anything that noticeable unless you're looking for it.
Not oozing ceilings
No.
and slamming doors. And
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, that is some Hollywood stuff right there.
absolutely.
And this would have been, I'd have to look it up. You know, I am going to look it up. Hold on. The magic of editing will bring me right back. But I want to see, how close was this happening from The Exorcist? When did The Exorcist come out?
Ooh.
You know, because I don't think I've actually seen anybody bring that up, because The Exorcist was known as being so scary at the time
Right.
that people were literally passing out. It was in 1973, so this movie was only a couple years old at the time.
Now, mind you, speaking of The Exorcist, I had always heard it's the most terrifying movie ever.
To be fair,
Oh
though,
my
Megan,
God.
you watched it in like 2020.
Well, and
for the
that's
first
what I was
time
gonna say.
as an adult.
I finally watched it, and it was really lame.
But at the time, it was cutting edge.
Yeah,
People hadn't
I
seen.
get it.
People hadn't seen stuff like it. The scene of the little girl like jamming the crucifix up inside of her at the time, that was a no-no.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
Right.
So it sent people into panics. This only happened. This movie came out 2 years before this happened, with a dad who was completely like he enthralled with the occult and everything. I wonder where he got the idea from.
That's a really good point.
You know. Thank you. I do.
You're so smart.
You're so
smart.
I don't. And unfortunately, to anybody it makes mad, I'm sorry. I don't believe in Ed and Lorraine. I do, however, appreciate everything they did to help bring the paranormal into more of the, center stage with everybody, to get people more actively wanting to know more. I do appreciate them for that. I'm not saying I don't hate them. I don't wish they were never around or anything like that. Because I think when I tell people that, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you feel that way. It's just my feeling, okay? They did it for notoriety. I believe they spawned an actual paranormal society who today is looking for more truth.
That's evolved.
It's evolved, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've gained so much from it. So, no. I believe the Amityville house is not pure fiction. Pure fiction.
So is it not real?
I don't even know what to say for this. It gets the big old nothing.
Thumbs down.
So, I mean, this is where it is. Now, look, you only hear our opinions. If
Yes.
you have a different opinion, that's fine, because we can be wrong.
Absolutely.
We can be wrong. We don't know. We're not there. But we just gather the information that we have, and we make our own judgment on it. And from what we gather and what we see, we just don't feel like it's real.
I definitely don't.
But it doesn't change the facts. These facts, we take from reputable sources.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel differently, that's fine. We don't mind. That's okay.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
And if you noticed in the beginning of our stories, we did not list our sources for our story putting together. So those will now be located in the show notes if anybody wants to go and check out the things that
And it
we
seems
found.
counterintuitive to have to read them off every episode. But we do want to make sure we give credit to the sources that we find our
Absolutely.
information.
Yep.
So I think this is where we're going to roll this one out. We'll be back with another swell family haunting next week.
A great family episode.
Yeah, so where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram at For the Booze and on Facebook at For the Booze.
You can also find us on Twitter at For the Booze. Always so fun to hear from listeners. And on YouTube at For the Booze. Hey, we just got a camera set up with the Xbox and stuff for our kid, but maybe we'll use it and make some videos for you guys. I think that would be fun.
Ooh.
We're also throwing around the idea of maybe watching ghost hunting shows and live streaming them on Twitch. So if you guys think that's a good idea and you would like us to do that and be a part of it, let us know. Email us and tweet at us.
Yes.
Also, show suggestions, and please, we miss reading your stories so much. We haven't done them in so long.
So much.
I don't want to give up on this because I thoroughly enjoy it. So if you have a story out there, even if you think it's not that great. I don't care. Megan doesn't care. We want to read it. It could be anything. This is a paranormal show. It's not who has the most impressive paranormal activity show. We want it all. So, forthebooze12@gmail.com. Send them out with your show suggestions and whatever. Even if you just want to say hi, that's fine too.
And we can always read them. You can be anonymous if you like. And
you can send them in a voice clip and read them yourself if you'd like.
Oh. Well,
Hold on now. I think they should also go give us 5 stars.
Oh, that too.
That too, because, we're trying to move up, and we've gained quite a few listeners over the last few weeks, and it's helping, but nobody's leaving any reviews.
I know.
And we need those to get some kind of recognition to get the show going farther. We love doing this for you guys, and we have the best listeners, and we want to know that you guys love us back. Love us back. Heart hands. Love us back. I even hit the microphone twice. I've hit the microphone twice for you guys. So hey, 5 stars. Apple if you can, or wherever. That's fine. I'm so excited. I'm like tapping the microphone. Anyways.
Okay.
Here's what it is.
Are we done? Is that it?
I'm done. I'm ranting.
Oh, okay.
I'm ranting.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everybody. We appreciate you all so much. We hope you had a very spooky, happy Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
And we will catch you in the next one.
Bye.